Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 1977 film Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento. This is episode 395. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Sabaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Hello. We were actually at a Super Bowl party and had to cut out right after Rihanna so we could hurry back to record our show. So
I was telling Tony that we had spoilers the whole game because the people watching the game in the basement were 10 seconds ahead of the people watching the game on the main level. So we would hear them go, woo! And we'd be like, what? What is it? We all look at the screen and it's like, oh, okay, touchdown. That happens. So it was like spoilers the whole time.
Yes. We ended up we didn't watch any of that. We just watched the the Brain Scramblies episode of what we do in the shadows.
Oh, awesome.
Which is great.
Cool. Normal years, I would go skiing today because Super Bowl Sunday is the best day to go skiing. But this year I passed up getting a pass, and I'm mourning it. So next year I gotta pass. So
yeah, we usually go to the movies, but this year we just we watched Brain Scramblies and
none of us
Conk on Britain. So
yeah. All right. Suspiria. Suspiria is a 1977 Italian supernatural horror film directed by Dario Argento, who co-wrote the screenplay with Daria Nicolodi, who is such a favorite that I'm like seeing everywhere because I just watched Paganini Horror and Daria Nicolodi's in that, and she was a writer on that. Partially based on an 1845 essay, Suspiria de Profundis, I think inspired by, maybe more than based on. It stars Jessica Harper as an American ballet student who transfers to a prestigious dance academy, but realizes after a series of brutal murders that the academy is a front for a supernatural conspiracy. It also features Stefania Cassini, Flavio Bucci, Miguel Bosé, Alida Valli, who is amazing, Udo Kier, who is unrecognizable, and Joan Bennett in her final film role. So, all right, let's talk about Suspiria. I cannot believe in this is episode 395. I cannot believe that we've never discussed Suspiria before. That sort of blows my mind. Let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. I'm kind of excited because I know, Drew, this is not your favorite movie, so you're the perfect person to kick off the opening thoughts. So really briefly, give us your opening thoughts on it, and we'll all avoid beating up on you. Instead, we'll give our thoughts, and then we'll move into the topics. So I lay it down. Go ahead.
I feel like it's almost blasphemous to horror fans anytime I offer my opinion on this movie. This is the third time I watched it. I will say I did enjoy it more this time than the other two times that I watched it because I at this point I knew what I was getting in for. I've always thought it was an incredibly beautiful movie with a very slight script. I feel like this has a lot of it's very style over substance. Like there's not a lot of meat on the bones in my opinion, and it just sort of ends. It's very anticlimactic too. Sure. And that's always really bothered me about it. I don't hate it. I just am not. I don't connect with, like, this is a lot of people's favorite movie, and I mean, not without reason, but I just don't connect with it the way a lot of other people seem to, because it's I watch it and I'm like, yeah, that was a cool movie, but like, it's not something I feel the need to revisit unless, I probably wouldn't have watched it again, honestly, if not for this podcast.
Right. Okay, fair. I think that's it's. I'm really glad that you shared that because that'll give us something to respond to. Julia, I know you've seen this before, but watching it with you today, I felt like we were both seeing it again for the first time. I mean, you know, I mean, you and I had definitely watched this in the past.
Yeah, it seemed vaguely familiar, but I didn't really remember it much. But I will say, I mean, I'm not going to really think right now about whether I agree that it's style over substance, but the style is great. I mean, the style. What I love about this film is the style. I mean, it's just so cool looking. You know, everything about it. Like I love. I'm reading about how the rich, because I was just fascinated the whole time with the colors. You know, the
Hmm.
super rich blue of the walls in the entrance of the you know, the dormitory, whatever they call it, the school, and then all the red, tons and tons of red. And so I was reading about how it was achieved, and it's filmed with Eastman Color Kodak stock, but then they printed it using one of the remaining last three strip Technicolor machines, so that
Mm.
they could get that. So I think that's just really neat that they paid so much attention to that. Buildings are incredible. The set design is incredible. Jason, the place, I was wrong. The place that where the big plaza that we were talking about that's
Yes.
later on in the film is actually called Königsplatz in
Uh huh.
Munich. So that's a
So
that's a
the
thing,
Plaza of the King.
I guess. And so, but there were so many really cool sets, really cool effects, really cool shots, you know, even just at the very beginning when she's coming out of the airport and like the wind hits her so that her scarf, the way her scarf blows back, it looks like she's being attacked. You know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many little things like that where I was just like, this is really good looking film. So like I say, I have to give it some thought as we talk as to what this, whether I think it's substantive or not, but I just think it's so cool looking that it didn't really matter that much to me.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Tony, I mean, I have a feeling you've probably seen this movie, you know, nine
Oh
times
yeah.
at least. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
you know, I don't. I'm in some ways I'm with. I understand where Drew's coming from because there are other movies, not this one, that I don't connect with that are also people's favorite Italian horror film, or
Mm,
that they list them amongst them, and they don't always resonate with me, even though I can appreciate bits of them. This movie, however, I think wins me over in its style, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite movies because as you discover movies, like the time that most of us of our generation would have discovered this, we've probably seen a lot of other, you know, because I don't think we saw it in 77, right? So
no.
we would have seen it on video. And by the time you discovered this movie amongst a lot of other, you know, if you're going through the kind of more mainstream like Friday the 13th for you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, a ton of Full Moon, like there's, you know, maybe you've seen The Changeling, maybe you've seen others, like nothing as you're discovering things, even though there may be contemporaries, usually like nothing looks like this, right?
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
has this otherworldly flavor or dares to, and we'll get into some of the horror you know, bits. None of them dared to do what you see in this movie in the same way. You know, we might have suited, you know, some kind of European flavored horror like The Omen or something, but even that doesn't have what this has, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's why that's a big part of it, and the artistry behind it is amazing. I mean, I have it on a steelbook from Synapse, and
Mm.
I wish that more companies. I'm not angry because it's capitalism and we need to do, but like I got the steelbook and it's amazing and it looks beautiful, has a soundtrack, everything, and then not
God, the
too
soundtrack,
long
the
after
Goblin
that,
soundtrack is amazing.
yeah, not too long after that, they released the UHD of it. And I'm
Uh,
just like, come on, man! Like I just bought this like decently priced steelbook, and now I really, although watching it this time, I really did look and go, I should not spend the money. I need it. I know. I wish they that companies had like a buy-in program. Like, okay, you bought the steelbook, $20 gets you the UHD or
like it's a
something like that.
car. Like you could trade in your car
Yeah,
for the upgrade. Sure. Yeah.
because I do wish I had that, and they did an amazing job. Like this is not against them, you know. Like, but personally, as a cinephile who loves this movie, I'm like, oh, this guy, if I could watch this in 4K, because the restoration on the Blu-ray is, I mean, it is beautiful. I watched it partially on Tubi because I was catching up, and I just was like, it was there, and then I watched the Blu-ray, and
that must be
the one
very,
on Tubi
very
looks
interesting.
good, but my internet connection isn't great, and so like watching on this new Blu-ray that was just, oh, the
Well,
colors just pop and it just looks so beautiful. And while I think that it maybe you could take some of those lumps of like, is it, the plot isn't deep, and I kind of, in some ways though, I'll be honest, the things in my head about what's going on behind the scenes with all the witches,
hmm
it's perhaps so much cooler without knowing in some ways. Like, I was talking to a friend of mine recently about how cool it was when we were younger and we didn't know what the hell a Clone Wars was.
right,
It was a throwaway
absolutely.
line, and we were just like, what is that? And so I don't mind as much. I go back and forth. Like, I would like to see more stuff. And I know
Yeah.
this is the beginning of a trilogy, but like, I'm okay with it being a little thinner because it's got so many horror gags and it looks so beautiful. So I know that my opening was kind of long-winded,
No.
but I just, this piece of artistry is, I think that it's just the culmination of a lot of really interesting things at just the right times that has made it the classic, along with this, getting the soundtrack. And I've been lucky enough also to see it played live with Goblin playing it live
I'm so
at a
jealous.
venue. And
Well, next time, Julia, they did come to Estes Park last year, and next time they do that, I will let you know, and we will go watch Goblin because that'll kick ass. That'll
it
be
was,
wonderful.
At the Stanley Hotel, which is
it's,
super cool.
Yeah,
oh, that's where it was.
that's my
Oh
understanding.
man,
So
that would
yeah.
have been so. I kind of almost wish I could have flown up to do that because
Well,
it was a
next
pretty
time,
decent
I will
venue
make sure
here.
we all know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds amazing. If you can do that, I highly recommend it. At the best venue possible, see it where you can, you know.
Thank you. I'm gonna just pool my opening thoughts into the first topic, which is, this time when I watched it, I've seen this movie so many times that it's just sort of on rotation, and I always remember certain parts of it really clearly, and other parts of it, not so clearly. But I probably see it like once every couple of years. Uh, I have seen it at the Tarantino Fest. I've seen it recently at the Alamo House. I've seen it many times at home. I first started watching it after we got out of school and wound up back in Austin. So we were all the way out of school. So I was a young professional. And it was at that moment that I started discovering Italian horror. And I have to tell you, before then, I had seen some Italian horror of this era, and I didn't get it, and so I'd immediately turn it off or return the tape or whatever. And then somehow something clicked, and I was like, this stuff, something like Suspiria or like any of these films by Antonio Margheriti or any of those guys, you got to watch it with a certain perspective. You have to watch it in context, and then suddenly it clicks in a certain way, and you're like, oh wow, and then you can't take your eyes off of it. But I'm telling you, I watched a lot of these movies several times and was completely flummoxed. Why is the filming so stylized? Why is everything dubbed? Why, you know, and and Drew, by the way, I know that that's not your problem at all with these movies. You're more sophisticated than that. I'm talking about a whole nother thing, which
Well,
is
one would hope that's what you think.
yes, but what I'm saying is, I'm just saying that you might have your issues with this movie, but I'm saying that before you can even come to Suspiria, you have to sort of. I almost feel like you need to have a mini literature, a mini lecture where your guide stands outside in the lobby with you and says, "Okay, gang, we're about to go in and watch Suspiria, and here's what you need to know about the Italian New Wave." Because no movie exemplifies what it is to have an almost perfect new wave Italian new wave horror film than Suspiria. And it like there are many of these movies. Some are terrible, some are okay, but this one really exemplifies it. And I kind of feel like you almost need to have a guidebook ahead of time. This is what you're going to look, just like if you were about to go into a church and they were going to say, okay, listen, this is what we're going to look for. We're going to look for buttresses. We're going to look for these statues. This is what this is called. But because it would be difficult, I think, for me to come out of Ant-Man and then take this as a movie, you know? It's a movie, I get it, but I'm saying there's some stylization going on here that makes almost no sense in the same afternoon with a regular Hollywood film. I mean,
And I think you're really hitting upon whether it works or not and why it works so much for people and I think it kind of mirrors that, you know, it helps if you have some history of what's come up through this, but if you just come at it blind,
right,
you know, for many of us it was exactly like that. Whoa, this is what film can do.
yeah.
Like, all this color and strangeness, and I actually it's even cooler because I got to watch it on the Blu-ray. I got to watch it in Italian this time,
Oh,
which
really?
I don't think I've done before, if I remember correctly. I don't think I might have seen it somewhere else. I think I may have seen it once or maybe parts of it, but the Blu-ray has it in Italian. And that was a cool experience as well
Well, and
to be
what's
able to see
strange
it.
is you know, this isn't a film that's pure what's the word for absurdity, you know? This isn't the theater of absurd. There's a story, you know. It's more extraordinarily stylized in a way that you wouldn't like.
Well,
Hammer films are highly stylized, but this is way beyond that, you
Right.
know. And
honestly, that is one of the things that I do enjoy about it is that it gives no F's about being realistic. Like I
right.
find
Yeah.
movies that strive for like when I watch a movie or read a comic book or whatever, like I'm interested in being pulled into an alternate reality. And this movie is very much of that mindset.
Yeah.
I just wish that I felt more invested in the characters. Like cuz there's like characters that are introduced that just kind of like disappear and stuff like
I think
that.
that's completely fair.
I think that's fair
And
as well, yeah.
But
yeah,
I will say when someone tells me, "Oh, Suspiria is my favorite movie," it's not like I roll my eyes at that.
right.
Like I understand fully why people love this movie even though I myself do not love it.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that most of all, that you would engage with a work that you're not crazy about, because it can be a pain in the ass when, especially when you're in the position you're like somebody's explaining you, oh no, you don't get it. This is why, and you're like, no, got it. I'm just saying, not my thing. Um, let's talk a little bit about what happens in here. Oh wait, actually, before we move on, Julia. So I can't remember. You're sort of, in theory, our resident color commentary person. But when you
It's
come, but
in the official opening,
it's in the official
everybody.
opening. But
Right.
this is episode 395. So I want to count.
Doesn't matter.
I want to make it aware that you could go on the stand in a murder trial, and you could be an expert on horror movies. So you know. Yeah, I don't know
Proceed.
why that. I'm trying to imagine the scenario where that would
Okay,
occur,
Right.
okay,
like
okay. Anyway,
why
what's your
you would
question?
need that. The question is, when you watch this movie, are you going, oh, I'm watching this movie in the context of it being Italian New Wave, or are you just like, this is just yet another movie that Jason asked me to watch? Like what?
No, neither. No, I'm watching it and going like I've been saying, this music is so interesting and innovative and cool. Like, what is that instrument? You know, what is that? And speaking of the instruments, I'm going to find him in a second, but it's you know, like I said, the colors are so rich, it's so cool. There's not, I don't, because I'm color commentary. I don't place it in like what's going on in the context of this film. You know, like what
Right.
in what cinematic universe, blah blah blah. It's the let's see, the bouzouki, a Greek mandolin,
Mm,
is one of the instruments that they use,
Mm,
and the
mm, mm.
Indian tabla drums. I mean, there's just, and then there's bells, and there's this really cool keyboard that I forget the name of, but it's just the instruments are so cool. That's what I'm like. I'm watching this and just going, I love the music, I love the sound effects, I love the colors, I love everything. But no, I don't ground it in any specific time or country or era
movement.
of film. Yeah.
Okay, well, fair. So maybe to some extent, I'm talking out of my ass, but I needed to understand this movie in a context before I was able to like kind of get into it. One of the things that Tarantino said about it when he introduced it at his festival was, he goes, a lot of people have described this film and its plot as dreamlike, and he goes, I don't like it when people use that term because it hides of a lot of offenses. It can excuse, you know, screw ups in continuity and things that are just mistakes or incorrect or that you didn't have time to fix or whatever. You know, sometimes things are incompetent and sometimes things are just the way they are because it's the best you could do. And it's not fair really to go, oh, it's dreamlike, and so you don't have to worry about it. But he goes, but this movie really is dreamlike. You know, there are there are a lot of
Sure.
moments that have a dreamlike quality to it.
And the finale is actually literally inspired by a dream that Daria Nicolodi had.
Nickelodeon, yeah, yeah. So let's get into the story a little bit. Jessica Harper of Phantom of the Paradise, which is a film that we have discussed on this show. She is a ballerina who has come from New York to a prestigious German ballet school for a 3-year program that it promises to be extraordinarily like demanding and competitive, and also made up of, you know, hyper wealthy people. And the first night that she arrives, you have instantly this sort of detective story kind of stuff. She sees a woman arguing as she is running out of the school. So Jessica Harper arrives at the school. A woman is arguing as she runs out of the school with somebody unseen on the inside of the school, and that argument is going to keep coming back. So since we're not, we can do spoilers, we can jump ahead. I thought it was really neat, and I wanted to get your guys' thought on it. With this thing of she sees the woman who's running out, she sees her argument, she sees her lips movement. That's going to lead her to later discover a hidden passage. That is almost like a detective movie. Like at that moment, the film is like borrowing stuff from like just a classic detective film. You know, something somebody said
Yeah.
earlier. I mean,
Where
uh,
stuff starts to make sense. And you're like, wait a minute.
right.
That makes, yeah.
Right, going back, I think there are some probably other moments in the film when they play with memory, like somebody plays back something. But the only one that's popping into my head right now is this moment of an iris, of turning an iris. Um, anyway, Jessica Harper moves into the school, and what she finds is that the school is ruled over by two very powerful women. There is Dark Shadows Joan Bennett as Madame Blanc and Alida Valli as Miss Tanner. And they are so different from one another because Joan Bennett is this sort of, she speaks with an old Hollywood accent, and she's very sort of regal, and her character is identical to her matriarchal Dark Shadows character. And she's super rich, and she knows Jessica Harper's character's aunt and all that stuff. And then there's Alida Valli. I don't know anything about this actress, but she is so interesting to watch because, you know, her smile is huge, and she's, you know, supposed to be she wears this German headmistress outfit that's very similar to the one that the model in Claws of the Lorelei wore. And I don't know, it's so neat because you're instantly introduced to these two women who are going to be in charge of Jessica Harper's life from then on.
By the way, I think you're one of the first people I've ever heard of who likened this to kind of a side Italian horror version of perhaps like Blowout, right?
Yes,
so,
yes,
so
I
it's
hadn't
like,
thought about that, but you're right.
but you
Yeah,
just, when you're talking about it, like, oh, you mean Blowout, which is, you know, how she, but also the other great thing about this is we have an extra addition to the detective part where there is a cabal of evil actually preventing her from remembering these things through
yes,
black magic manipulation, which is
yeah.
yet another wrinkle in that.
Well,
But
by
her retelling it, and you know, and they're putting her there, and they're keeping her off guard too because they send her away, and they say, well, maybe that's not the best. Let's, you know,
Isn't
like
that a
all of that
weird
stuff that's
plot
going.
point? How they
Yeah,
send her, she shows up and they're like, "Oh, hey, turns out your room's not ready, so you need to go rent a room with this other girl." And so she goes out to rent the room with the other girl, and I don't understand why the plot. In other words, I can't imagine a person sitting down in a typewriter and writing it this way because it makes no sense. Because then she
the
comes back
the
the next,
the Olga stuff is one
yeah,
of the things that, like, they introduce that character like she's going to be like sort of like the frenemy type character,
yes,
and then she's like hand waved away
right,
basically in the very next scene. And that is the sort of things that I find frustrating about this movie, because it makes it difficult for me to become particularly invested in what's going on.
Right.
Um,
Because
you know,
you're feeling like they might pull the rug out from under you next scene anyway, so it doesn't matter.
it's something like that. Like it
Yeah.
just it's just like there's a slightness there. And like when you're talking about like people saying, well, it's dream logic. No, it's just that they didn't care. And that's fine because like they had their objective of telling this sort of psychedelic fairy tale kind of thing. And that's okay. But you could cut this character out
They should have cut it out.
entirely,
That's the thing
and
that
the
doesn't
movie
make
Hey,
would be the
sense.
same.
So
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I also, watching it this time, I got more of the impression that, and again, maybe it's because I was watching a different language and was thinking about things differently. I got more the impression of what's really happening is at first they go, well, we can't have a new person around because we don't want, things are already complicated.
We got to do
And
our Satan
then
stuff.
but
Yeah.
also when they bring her back, it's initially it's to kind of keep her out of the mix because the detectives are there. She already says something, but then the other part of that is the more they move her around and do things, the more confusing it gets for her. And so it's part of the manipulation
Mm.
because they're
So,
also, because it doesn't make any sense that we got your $50 back and stuff. It's just really a way to kind of just, we move you around from place to place so that you're always kind of put off.
well, I have a different theory. So I think, first of all, my theory, without having read what I read, is that because she gets sick, the girl Olga's like, oh shit, she's also gonna have the same situation that that Pat had, where she's about to get killed. I don't want to be anywhere near that when that happens. But I just read that that I guess Barbara Magnolfi is the actress who played Olga, I'm assuming.
Okay.
Anyway, it says Barbara Magnolfi revealed in subsequent years that her belief was that Olga was a young witch in training,
Mm.
which would mean that she's just in on like the whole. But the idea to me, either way, is that they need to get her back to the house because she's been chosen, basically, to be like
A
some kind of
sacrifice.
sacrifice or something. Yeah,
It would
yeah,
be helpful if any of that were the case. It would be helpful to have a line of dialogue somewhere.
right.
But another thing that both Drew and Tony are getting at is, if so, for instance, let's put it this way: if we are supposed to not get that invested in the Olga character, the way you solve that is by not spending so much time with her. But because we're in the beginning of the movie, we as audience are trained in the beginning of the movie, the first 20 minutes or so, to lean forward and pay attention to the information you take in, because probably you're seeing characters who are going to matter. And then in the second, quarter or so, you lean back a little bit because you get into the rhythm of the movie, and you can kind of introduce characters and you kind of understand that they might not be important. So
Yeah, I'm
it's screwing with
glad
it.
she went away because I didn't like her at all as a character. But what's interesting is that because the script was written for supposedly they were going to be 12-year-olds or younger school,
Mm,
that was what the script, they didn't change this, that they decided, it was decided by the studio, by the censorship whoever it was, that decided that they couldn't be children because that would be too horrible for these children to be dying. So it was made, they were made into adults, but they didn't change the script. So so the kid, so this girl especially is so immature, like the way she behaves with the whole S for Sarah and for
sure.
Snake, all that stuff that she's doing. It's like she's a little kid, and it's because she was written to be a little
But
kid.
I'm
It's just
skeptical. I
really
have to
You
tell you, I'm
know,
funny.
skeptical about that because she has an apartment. I mean, I don't know.
Well, no,
that
but
it does make more sense for a ballet school though, because ballerinas all
yeah,
started out very
right.
young. Like these women would be considered quite mature to
Yes.
be ballerinas. Not that it really matters much because this is a ballet school in which we see almost no ballet.
Right.
True.
They go to see the
And what
Bolshoi.
happened? By the
That
way, what
happens
happens to
off
the other
screen.
guys? There was there was actually a film a scene shot with the Bolshoi, but they didn't have it. They
Oh,
didn't use
really?
it.
How interesting.
So, but yeah, I'm wondering what happened to the other, because there was a couple. I thought there was more than one guy, but there's only one guy that ends up being
Huh.
around. Anyway, because
I can't explain.
I'm remembering when we saw them dancing.
There are guys around at different times, and then at different times they're not seen
Hmm.
there. So I'm not really clear on what it's like for the male population of the school. There aren't very many, but there are some dancers. This
I
this
would love to if the anybody listening wants to correct me, but it sure seems to me like male dancers would have really good sex lives if they wanted them, because either you're surrounded by women who aren't around men very often, and you like women, or you're like gay and there's the other dancers are also gay. Most of the I'm just like, this seems like you'd have a really good love life,
It
but
does
I
seem
could
like
be
a
wrong.
target-rich environment.
Rich,
But I,
yeah, exactly.
you know,
I
I
think I saw there was some show I was watching, and they kind of sort of went into that. And basically, the idea is like every other people in theater in general,
Yeah,
like they're like, "Hey, this seems like this way,"
yeah.
or maybe like being shut. But it was basically like the pressure's so high. Like, yes, kind of, but also not so much because I'm just always dancing or I'm always doing this
Right.
art
Who has
that
time
like
for
you
this?
it would
Yeah.
seem like this would be that, but yet here I am with this pressure and
Sure.
everything that goes on with that. And so I forgot what show it was, what it was, a documentary or something.
Okay,
And I
cool.
remember kind of picking up on that, and I apologize for not having more information, but
That's okay.
from the perspective of what a
Yeah.
couple things I've seen was basically
Well, and it
sounds
makes
great
sense
on
that you might
paper, and
you
yet
might not
here
want
we
to
are.
mess up your
Yeah.
relationship with your
Oh, well,
colleagues too.
the problem, that's the other one, is there when
Yeah.
things go wrong, it's famously
Yeah.
bad, right?
Right,
Because
right.
you do have to dance with that person
Yeah,
in a
sure.
highly skilled manner
Yes.
many,
Makes
many,
sense.
many, many, many times, right? So any drama, and in theater, as we know, there's lots of drama,
Mhm.
both by nature, there's drama, but
Yes,
internally, there's also drama. So
sure.
anything that helps, that creates more, is not
It's frowned
necessarily a
upon.
good thing. So yeah, there's a
Right.
lot of also, I mean, your health is, a dancer's life, it's a ballet dancer's life is stressful, strenuous, and the time that you're a ballet dancer can be very short
Sure.
for many, many, many reasons.
Yep.
And I know this, just from also, watching stuff, but I had an interest because my sister danced and I always used to take her to dance class and stuff. And even that's a tiny, tiny, tiny microcosm. And she went to like some of the, ballet camps and stuff like that. So I got to hear about, enough, but not super, super duper famous stuff. But like in general, that all of it is a very stressful, very strenuous, artistic endeavor, no matter what. So,
Mhm.
which, and add witches to it, and boy, witches and murders,
Yes.
you got a hotbed of
And rooms
crazy.
full of razor wire. I heard that you were
Oh
like,
Exactly.
gosh.
I heard that
Yeah.
you were
Once
the
when I was watching
razors.
this with Tony was like, "Oh, damn it. There's where I put all my razor wire."
Yeah, the
Like,
razor wire room. I don't.
like
Who put the window above the razor wire room? That window should never be open. We really should fix that next time. But that's again what makes this such a bizarre, and why people say dreamlike. Like, again, this is a movie that dares to have a razor wire room that
yes.
somebody's escaping and they go, and it's horrific. And just because, again, the more you thrash, the worse it's gonna get. Like, there's
Yes.
no way to easily extricate yourself from a room
Well, and the
full of
poor
razor
actress
wire.
apparently had a really hard time with it, because even though it wasn't razor wire, it was still wire,
Oh, it's got to
and
be.
she
I
was
mean,
like, it was
it's
like super pinchy and
Ay,
uncomfortable.
ay,
sure,
ay.
of course, and then that
See, that
turns
just
into
gave
what
shivers across
amounts
my
to a
whole
ritual
body.
sacrifice. I mean, that is horrific, but it's also, when you watch it, that's yet another thing. Like, I don't know why. Like, the first time you see it, it's hard to. If anybody's a nerd of that, I don't know what to say. Like, you maybe go watch some comedies or something. I don't know what to say, but
Yeah.
like the first time you see somebody go, "Oh, I'm escaping. Here's this window, and it looks like a window out." And instead it's a window into a room full of razor wire. Like,
Yeah.
that is like, am I watching this? Like, and it's blue, and it has this deep dark blacks and pulled out blues, and that struggle, and they don't do something you might do, whereas like, okay, we're gonna have this blue, but we're also gonna make all the blood that's on her super red. It doesn't do
Right.
that, right? So it
Yeah.
becomes this otherworldly thing, because again, who the hell has a room full of razor wire
It is so. It also it makes me
in a
from
in
a
a in a in a ballet conservatory, no less, right?
right. It's an excellent point. Yeah, exactly. What this is so nuts, and it reminds me of how the writers of the Mission Impossible movies are said to basically say, "Okay, we need 7 action scenes. Let's brainstorm some, and then let's write the connection." The tendrils that connect the scenes one to the other. And sometimes I think this is a similar thing. Like somebody went to a whiteboard and go, what would be wacky? Like, what would be scary and weird and cringy and would make you just shiver all over? Oh, I know, boss. A pit of razor wire. Okay, razor wire. Where are we gonna get that? I mean, that's just brilliant. And I but to get the funny thing is that's an interesting murder. But if you go back to the first murder in here, which is again setting up sort of a detective story, a woman who knows something is running away and she gets
Yeah.
murdered in an apartment building.
But
It's
not
super
not
confusing.
but not just an apartment building. The initial part of the murder
Yeah.
takes place outside of a second window that doesn't even appear to have a balcony.
No,
Excellent
that
point.
was
Yeah.
so
It's
that
just
whole thing was really weird
amazing.
because she sees our main character sees this girl running. She goes to the conservatory. She knocks on the door. Or no, she didn't knock on the door. First the girl runs out. She sees the girl running
And
out
the girl
talking
who's
like this.
running who gets killed is Pat,
Who get
by the way.
Pat? Yeah. So then she goes and knocks on the door. And she's told, "Go away, go away." So she leaves. Who knows where she goes? Maybe she goes to stay in a hotel. I don't know. So then she sees the girl running through the woods, and then we now follow Pat. Pat goes to that same Olga's, I guess, place. No, was it where? I don't remember where she goes. But anyway, she goes somewhere, some other place.
It's not Olga, but it's another dancer that doesn't
But
live
another
on the
off-campus place, right? So she goes to her, and she's like, "Okay, I'm all shaken up," and she's like, "All right, well, tell me tomorrow, whatever." But then, like, she's in her own room, and she's obsessed with the window. And I'm like, if you're freaking out by the window, why are you going to the window? Get away from the window. And
Right.
like you said, there's no balcony. But while she's looking out the window, this hairy arm, breaks the window. For some reason, there's curtains on the
Well,
outside of the window, which made no sense to me.
before no, that's not curtains. That's her laundry.
Okay, whatever.
It's
So,
her.
but
It's the
before,
roommate's laundry. Well, I mean,
Huh.
okay, but you're gonna say
yeah.
before what?
Before that, she sees eyes outside
Yes.
of
She
the window.
sees the eyes. Well, she sees the eyes pretty much the same time as she gets grabbed.
Yeah.
That's all happens together. I did not like that shot. I didn't like how they did the eyes because we see the eyes just up
Sure.
against the black
Sure,
background.
sure.
We don't see it through the window, which I think would have been cooler. I
Hmm.
also thought the arm coming through the window was weird. But then she's like being pressed by the arm up against. So we don't know whose arm it is. Like we never see a body with that arm. That whole thing is really bizarre, and I'm kind of like I kind of wish it
Well,
wasn't
that's the
there, honestly.
witchiness of it. That's what I think
Yeah,
is
but it's not.
amazing.
I didn't find it effective, especially because they cut whatever scene
There's
involved her
there's a weird confusing
somehow.
cut.
Yeah,
Yes.
somehow she gets away at that point and runs up to the roof, maybe, or does he grab her and take her up? But somehow she's suddenly at the roof and she's like up against this fence, kind of. That whole thing was super, not dreamlike, but just confusing. But for whatever reason, they're like, well, we really need to get her above the. By the way, I really love all the stained glass in this movie. I'm such a sucker for
Oh,
colored glass of
it's
any kind.
great.
So much colored glass. So they're like, we really want to see her have a great, really awesome effect of a person being murdered on top of the stained glass, then her head being pushed through it, so now her just head sticking out of the stained glass,
Which was
and then the
cool.
stained glass window just collapsing into the plaza and killing the other roommate, the other friend. So all of that was great, but I was just so put off by the weirdness of the hairy arm that didn't belong to anybody, and then suddenly she's on the roof. That whole thing bothered me a lot too much. So I wish they kind of would have cut all of that and just had her be on the roof, for like maybe run to the roof when she saw the eyes or something. I don't know, but that stained glass window thing was fantastic. I love that. That was cool.
But there is a cut there that I wonder if was filmed and then cut for time, or if they never filmed it.
There's cuts in the 92-minute version. I watched the 98-minute version because that's what's on the Blu-ray. So she gets stabbed a couple more times in the.
Well, let me make sure that you're tracking with what we're complaining about, because maybe it wasn't in yours. So tell me this. So she's being attacked by the window, and then suddenly there is a cut, and now she's up above
Against
the
this
skylight.
like wire fence thing, like some kind of weird wire wall. And so she's suddenly on the roof where she wasn't before. Then she gets stabbed. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah,
So anyway,
I mean, maybe I guess some. Yeah, it is. I remember there being some running, but maybe I'm just
Yeah.
I'm not sure because
It's fine.
since I did see a different cut, I'm not positive. I don't know.
No worries.
Yeah.
It was one little thing. There's only a few things like that where I'm just kind of like annoyed
The
by.
version we watched, by the way, was on Canopy, and it is like 98 minutes long. I mean,
we probably did see the same. If there's one there's 92 and 98.
So this is anyway, it's just a
Yeah.
confusing moment.
No, I
It
agree.
doesn't
I'm
matter
with you. I'm
really,
with
but
you.
but anyway, all of that is just to let us know that somebody's killing people. The funny thing is when you think about this, all of the acts of violence that what we later find out it is a conspiracy of witches to ultimately do a sacrifice, but also to kill witnesses who know about the witches. Their killings come from all kinds of people. There's a guy stalking around who's probably the same one that killed Pat, and that then kills Sarah, who's the one who falls into the razor wire, and then he reaches in and slashes her throat. There
Then there's like
is
the spirit that possesses the dog that kills the poor blind guy. That was horrible.
right. So there are, it almost doesn't matter. It's almost as though there's a malevolent force in the town of Freiburg that is able to just make people dead through various means. I mean, who knows? Maybe the big dude, the big scary guy who works in the school, is the one who's also the slasher. We it's interesting that the movie doesn't care to tell us who actually is doing the killings because it's not important. Because they're really being driven by these witches who have their coven and are planning to kill people off.
By the way, in the cut that you saw, is it text opening or does it have the strange kind of almost practical effects
I know the
3D?
one you're talking about with the puffy
Yeah, yeah,
Suspiria breathing
yeah.
thing. No, what we had the just white text in
Right,
Italian.
right. That's the Italian. Yeah, that's the Italian one. So
Yeah.
I kind of like the weird American 3D.
Yes,
That's just a bizarre. It makes it that much more bizarre. But I
it
get
does.
why
Yeah.
it's not the original. But I watched it full on without that this time and was kind of like, oh, I kind of dig the weirdness of the American credits sequence.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was thinking about that when we were watching, and I was like, "Wow, it's so interesting." This is the first time I've seen these Italian credits, and it's also strange that Canopy doesn't give you the option. Canopy being the service that you can log into for free if you have a library card. Canopy doesn't give you the option to see it in Italian, which is kind of a shame. But do
By
you
the
know
way,
that this?
Canopy is also one of the only places now where you can watch the Marauder Metropolis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How interesting! Wow, that's a wonderful idea.
We don't have Canopy where I am currently, and I used to fall asleep to that. I have it on Blu-ray and I could do that, but it's not the same as just kind of like setting your
No,
timer
I
on the TV
agree.
and stuff. But yeah, it's one of the few places that has that version, for better or worse. But that's neither here nor there. But if you want to watch it, Canopy's great. And just like other library services, there's licensees get paid, etc. So it's a really great service. I dig it.
That I like Canopy a lot, and like I say, if you have a library card, you can download Canopy on your Roku and presumably on your Fire TV. I actually don't know
Yeah,
if
if
it's
your library supports it, that's the thing.
fair. Yeah.
Like our library doesn't, and that's a bummer.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
but it's still great. If it does support it, I highly recommend getting a Canopy account because there's lots of amazing stuff there. And that's cool that they have the uncut Suspiria. That's even better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was looking into the dubbing on this movie, and clearly much of it is dubbed, but apparently, unlike a lot of Italian horror, this one is not completely dubbed. There is a lot of original English language recording going on because obviously Jessica Harper is
But
an
it's still
American,
dubbed because the fact is, it's dubbed by her. Because what they said
right?
is that there was a lot of times where she would be saying her lines and there would be like hammering going on from a set nearby. She was like so thrown off by that. Or like the German guy that she talks to he was speaking German, and so she
Right.
was like, "I don't know what you're saying." So he would have to tap her foot with his foot when he was done with his line, so she knew to
How
talk.
interesting.
So
Oh,
it's
Udo
all
Kier, you
dubbed.
mean? Yeah.
It
Uh,
wasn't Udo
That
Kier. It was
is
another guy.
the Udo Kier stuff, though, is like, why would you get Udo Kier
play a psychiatrist in a.
who has a great speaking voice
Yeah.
Yeah.
and dub him over with this really bland
Yes.
Yeah.
voice, especially when it's set in Europe? Like
It's almost not
his,
Udo Kier. It's just a
yeah,
pretty guy who looks kind of like Udo Kier.
But the guy I'm talking
yeah.
about is called Rudolf Schundler.
Are you talking about
Talking
the
about the
older,
Played
older man,
Professor
the
right?
the
Professor
second the second
Milius. Yeah.
professor? Yeah.
Professor
Okay.
Milius. Yeah.
Fair. By the way, that moment, Drew, to your point, like suddenly even Udo Kier seems normal. after the first like hour has gone by, and then Jessica Harper is like, "Man, I want to find out more about the director of this school," and she goes to this university just to talk to some people who are milling around, putting hors d'oeuvres on a paper plate at this what appears to be some kind of reception at this university. I've never felt more at home. I was like, "Oh God, thank God we're in like a normal environment." Like it was so, it was
By the
such a relief.
It almost seems like it's in a different movie because,
yeah.
like, it does look more like the real world than the rest of the movie. And
Yeah,
maybe that's another I never thought about it until I'm vocalizing it right now. Maybe that's another reason why I don't like that scene very much.
it's a weird. Well, I love how bizarre it is. We're at just some brutalist architecture college somewhere. She's doing because now it looks like at that point it could be a giallo movie where she's some amateur detective figuring out who's killing people and going to talk to some expert on why somebody would be obsessed with chickens or whatever. So yes. Anyway, that's a neat movie, but it is a neat moment, but it is weird that we've got Udo Kier there. Uh, she
I mean,
just
we don't, one thing we don't get, and I kind of, to Drew's point, that in perhaps a different movie, you might have somebody in on it. So there might be somebody more in on the witch part at the college, or like their tentacles are further out.
yeah.
But instead, we get kind of a, no, I mean, I think witches are, you're not off in the fact that this could be a thing. Like, she finds out more interesting information, but if you wanted to deepen it, you would have like, oh, that was reported, or something more sinister, somebody seeing her be more sinister, that kind of thing. We
Really
don't
good
get that
point.
here, but it does lead to her going back and everything like that. So
Can I go back to something real quick just because my internet connection went
Yes,
out, so I had
please.
to drop out. I just wanted to say regarding the dubbing thing
Mhm.
that Udo Kier actually benefited, though, even though you didn't like the fact that he's dubbed by by somebody English, he benefited from the dubbing because he'd had so little time to read the script that he couldn't learn the lines, and so literally a crew person was just giving him the lines, and he would repeat what they said,
Mm,
which the crew person was just lying on the ground and telling him
no
his
kidding.
lines.
That is so
Yeah,
funny.
so
Wow.
that worked in his favor, I guess, although it sounds uncomfortable.
It's a neat breather because this happens and then we get plunged back into the school. Because the hilarious thing is Susie is now investigating like a true. This is not a giallo movie. This is a supernatural movie, but like a true giallo hero, she is investigating despite that not being her job, and she is going to plunge herself back into this weird ass world for no reason other than she appears to want to know what's going on at the school that she's at.
I mean,
And
wouldn't
well, I mean,
you if you knew
people
about
who
people
care,
dying?
yeah, people she cared about have disappeared.
Yeah,
true.
And
No,
I mean, that's the impetus, right? Like,
yeah.
I
She's trying to
can't,
figure out what happened to her friend who
yeah.
supposedly just left.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. By the way, what she finds out at that university is, well, funny thing about your university, it was founded by this woman named Helena Marcos, who was a big old witch and apparently is dead. But
Maybe.
who knows?
Right. And that again, like what I was talking about, like in my supposed one, is not that there isn't a lot of information here, but the fact it is such a sidestep
Right.
in a kind of more detective area, it leaves the supernatural behind. But maybe we kind of need that. Maybe, maybe that's even more interesting, is that despite the fact that everybody knows that this is how it was founded, it doesn't extend past these things, and why you have the what becomes the three sisters who have dominion over each of their respective areas.
So Tony, explain to us that, because that, for what it's worth, that is only hinted at in this movie because they refer to her as the Black Queen, but they don't tell us about the three sisters or any of that world building that Argento is going to do in a later film.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically, he's planting the seeds. Who knew, I don't think he really thought like, oh, I'm gonna make this trilogy for sure,
Mhm.
because that's the way movies work. You can plan and plan and plan, and it may not happen. Sadly for me, each successive movie hasn't had the same impact.
Mm.
But
No,
perhaps it's just too far apart. Had they been had it been this like I'm gonna do a Three Sisters trilogy and I'm gonna get that done, that's gonna be my
Yeah.
big thing. Maybe things would have turned out differently. Who knows? I mean, that's all supposition. So
Mhm.
but again, I kind of, knowing what I know, I kind of almost dig that your imagination can fill in all these blanks in a way that perhaps you is better in some ways. Not to say that somebody's art is lesser because they want to fill in those parts or they had a plan, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, I guess is really what I'm getting at. And it worked less for me in the interim years
Yeah.
as opposed to just like what even is going on. Like there's this hierarchy. It's kind of like, I wanted to write something, for example, with the shadow conspiracy, the shadow cabal that's in possession, because I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah.
that whatever's going on there, but that lives in my imagination in a way that if it had been explained more, perhaps wouldn't have be as profound.
No,
And to
it's a
me, the
really good point.
witchery and the Three Sisters stuff that's hinted here plays with the bigger universe that is perhaps so much more mysterious because of that. In the same way that eventually, not sorry to skipping ahead, but
No, skip around all good.
at the end, the shadowy figure having very little of actually Helena Marcos on screen is so much more terrifying in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. And
Yeah,
I
when she
think
is on
that
screen, she's like a ghost.
yeah, I think that what she could be, and the fact that she even says, "I can be," what will you see when you
Huh.
see me?
Hmm.
As far and she can be whatever is the scariest thing for you. She
What an
comes,
interesting malevolent
but
force,
her
supernatural force.
original, like the fact that she's a shadow for so much of that is much more terrifying
And well, and the
in many
creepy ass
ways.
voice that people
Oh
aren't sure if
yeah,
it's an old prostitute or if it's actually Daria. What's her last name again?
Nickelodeon.
yeah,
Nickelodeon. That's one
yeah.
of the theories. Is that's her voice. Anyway, yeah, it's just so funny that you're just like we have no idea who you are, but you have a creepy voice.
There's a moment the first time the directress, who is Helena Marcos, this person that ultimately is the big bad in the background, who is holding the evil of the school together. Presumably, maybe she's always there, maybe she only visits, but there's a point where everybody is driven. This is so strange. Everybody is driven into I can't remember if it's the gymnasium or whatever, which they turn into sort of a World War One style dormitory, because
Well, the
everybody on the
dance
top
studio.
floor
Yes,
is
the dance.
driven away by the fact that maggots are falling through the ceiling,
Oh, that was so
um,
gross.
because there
Yeah, it
is
is.
rotted food in the attic. And
Supposedly,
when
I was always like, wait, what's actually going on? But that
yeah,
never did go back to that.
so I'm going to circle back to that and ask you what's going on there. But what's interesting is in this sequence, now that they're in this big dormitory where everybody's sleeping on cots, the directress comes and lays down in a cot very, very close to Susie and Sarah, the two roommates who are kind of investigating.
And that's
And
another scene that did not do
yeah,
it for me because it didn't seem after the fact I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's why it's creepy." But at the time, it did not seem creepy to me that somebody who would be called the directress, because I didn't understand that the directress was was Helena Marcos, the weird Greek, like ghost lady. So it didn't seem weird to me at all that somebody called the directress would come and sleep with the girls, given that all this shit had gone down, and so the girls probably pretty disturbed. So I would think that she'd be like, I'm just going to make sure everything's fine. I'm just going to sleep there just in case anything else weird happens. So the fact that she was acting that what's her friend's name?
Sarah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fact that Sarah's like whisper about this, she's like that I've heard that horrible snoring before. It's the weirdest snoring, and I'm just like, the poor woman has like sleep apnea or something. Give her a break. Like what? Because she's just like, it was so, I'll never forget it. And it was the directors. I remember, and I'm like, okay, so the director's sleeping there. What else? It takes a long time, that scene, to me, it felt like. And
Mm.
then at the end, I'm like, oh, okay, it's creepy because she's dead. But I didn't get that time that it was supposed to be creepy,
You're
so I
you're
was just
right
Oh,
that
kind of
it probably
irritated.
doesn't reveal that stuff properly.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point.
yeah, I guess I hadn't. To me, I think it worked for me because the whole idea is she's like, this is the gist of it is that's not really the directress. There's something else supernatural going on. And
Mm.
Yeah, but I didn't get
I've
that.
heard I don't know. I guess maybe I did, but then again, I could be my mind could be revising it since I have seen this several times. So
I
Sure.
hadn't even given it any thought. To me, it was just an amazing looking and sounding scene, and the logic of it had completely escaped me.
well, the
Uh,
way she lies down is also just the whole
Weird.
thing is
I mean,
strange, and it's supposed to be
it's a
off-putting in that
cool
way.
looking scene
Yeah.
because there's a sheet and then this weird figure lies down. But I just
She
thought the
lies
reveal
down
of
like
it was
Dracula.
weird.
I mean, there's a certain sort of
Kind of.
weird spiritual movement kind of
I don't know.
effect the way. So
It didn't
anyway,
work.
yeah, what's going on? Why does the plot have them all? Why does the plot drive them all out of the top floor and down into this cot thing? Like, is it
I
just an
didn't get
accident of the
that.
plot, or is it just spooky, or like I don't understand why this is happening? Does
Well, and I
anybody
thought
know?
we were gonna find out that the maggots were actually related to the witches, but there's never really any more talk about that.
Something maybe I didn't see it as much in this one, but I thought it was because something had been I mean, something gets shipped there, but
Yeah, Joan
I
Bennett
thought
says
also
we ordered some food. It wasn't good. It rotted.
the
There are maggots
implication
in it.
I thought also was that it was something that was shipped there by to for someone who had gone missing
Uh,
and just had been
well, that's
kept up
possible.
there.
If so, that's never connected in the version I saw.
Yeah,
But
because we see where the maggots are, and they're on food. They're on rotten
oh, and
food.
how about also I love the sound design so much because when they decide to stomp around in the maggot attic,
Ugh,
it's just crunchy,
Squish,
crunch,
squish,
so
squish,
crunchy,
squish.
Rice
gross. And
Krispies.
they dropped like rice on the girls, so it looked like a ton of maggots.
Ugh.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
So I think the real answer, if Daria Nicolodi were sitting with us, she would go, "Come on, Jason, use your head. It's there because it's interesting." That's like you're. I, I have a feeling
Well, you
it's.
should tag her in a tweet and see if she
Unfortunately, I
responds.
think that Daria
She's
Nicolodi is no
passed away.
longer with us.
Mm.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Jason has a pretty good what's the word I'm looking for? Score of people responding to his tweets when he tags them or
It's
tweet
true.
retweeting.
Well, I watch a lot of interesting stuff. Sometimes stuff that people aren't talking about very much recently, and so I'll go check out this shot of such and such park, in L.A. By the way, this is Audrey Landers here jogging with the guy who played Sloth, and Audrey Landers will like the tweet, because it's a cool picture. Maybe she hasn't looked at it in a while, so it's kind of cool. But yeah, unfortunately, Daria Nicolodi died in November of 2020 at
Mm,
70. I don't know why she died. Nothing was announced, but a lot of people in November of 2020 were dying of COVID. So I don't know.
yeah, who knows?
So who knows?
Good
She was
record
70
is the
years
word.
old. So
You have a good record of having your tweets retweeted by the
score was
celebrities.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that is anyway. If you were to ask Daria, she would probably go because it was creepy, man. That was part of my
I
night.
mean that regardless, the main thrust is to its credit. Never conflict, you don't have to have plot always.
Right.
I have to say this is again, I think it treads the line between style and substance. I'm leaning towards Julia. But at no point is there should we dial back this cool looking thing
Right.
because it doesn't immediately at this point push the plot? That's
Right.
never a thing.
Right.
And I
You're
think
absolutely
I
right.
don't know, and that's what makes it magic, right? To me.
No, I agree. And if you look at the remake, which I've only seen half of, I need to go back and finish it. It struck me as much more carefully plotted.
Yeah,
Like they're
I
much more connecting the dots between each of the scenes, so that you don't get lost.
Yeah, for me, it's for better or worse. I am not as enamored with it as I am this film, but
Sure.
there's a lot of interesting things in the remake, and so I'm kind of torn. I go back and forth. There's some really cool bits, but it's hard. It's hard too, because like Drew said, like for a lot of people, this is their favorite movie, right? Like, what are you
Mm,
gonna do when you do a remake? You're gonna lose X amount of people. You're gonna gain X amount of people. So
yeah.
I don't know what the right choice is, but
I
to me it was less The Thing and more other remakes for me. But
To me,
a
it's
lot of
more
interesting.
like you're deciding that you're remaking something just as part of it's going to be in conversation. Because I think it's probably fair to say that horror fans have probably mostly seen Suspiria and everybody else is probably mostly not. And you're going to need more of those
Well,
people who have not than have.
Yeah.
the thing is though about remaking this film.
Yeah.
And look, I haven't seen the remake. I can't comment on whether it's good or bad or, whatever. But when I did hear that they were remaking Suspiria, I will say this.
Mm,
This movie is so distinct. And I
right.
say this as someone that is not like an Uber fan. So I think that this is definitely coming from a sincere place. This
Yeah.
movie is so like just so distinct looking that it in a way kind of makes it difficult to remake, because this is such an auteur kind of piece. It's a very much an auteur piece of filmmaking, and I'm not saying that it's impossible, because obviously somebody went out and did it, but like, the other thing is that stuff from this movie has been filtered into so many other
Mhm.
horror films that it almost it almost makes remaking it pointless, because like the stuff that was good about this has already been co-opted by other filmmakers
Mm.
so like I wonder what the remake has to offer as far as its visual style.
I mean, we're going to have to eventually probably circle back to it just to discuss the choices, because we've watched, for instance, Antonio Margheriti made his Castle of Blood and then came around and made Web of the Spider. And boy, that's one way to do a remake, which is to literally shoot the film again. This is not that. This is totally a different thing. But like, and likewise, in 1979, Werner Herzog remade Nosferatu, and he
Mhm.
made it a visual sort of homage, but that was very distinct and different and took advantage of color. Weird. That I would say the 2018 Suspiria, which again I haven't finished, so that just shows you how interested I was in it. I can't explain that. I just have never gotten back to it. But it was much more, even with all its symbolism. To me, it struck me as much more prosaic. It's telling a story. You're getting, so it's kind of a way of, so far anyway. It was a way of making this story kind of make more sense. But I would like to get back to something that Drew was just saying that I think is a really interesting topic, which is how has Suspiria influenced other films? Has it? I mean, I keep thinking maybe that The Shining was a little influenced by it. There are elements of, when she walks
The
by and sees.
Shining, of
Mhm.
not just The Shining. Like, I just watched the Coppola Dracula for the however many times I've seen it the
Yeah,
other day, and it definitely takes some color cues from
really,
Suspiria. Yeah, like the way the color is used in that movie and the way the color is used in this movie
no
strike me as
kidding.
very similar. So I think that this is a movie that has had a lot of influence on other, probably more mainstream film. Like,
Mm,
I mean, Shining, a couple of Dracula are both very mainstream movies.
that's true.
So,
That's very true.
but they're also made by people who, like, Kubrick and Coppola are also both rabid studio students of film. So I have no
Yeah.
doubt that they probably have seen this. Or, well,
When
Kubrick is dead. So, but you know
Sure,
what I
sure,
mean.
but when Jessica Harper, for instance, she's walking down the hall and she sees the maid polishing what appears to be either a knife or a spade, and the young boy in his little Lord Fauntleroy outfit is standing next to her, and they're both staring at her. I got real. It reminded me a lot of The
That's so
Shining.
creepy.
Yeah,
That
I
kid is so freaking creepy. I mean, really, both of them as a pair, they're just
it,
Also, if I think that we've seen the shot in many, many, many other movies, but even the shot where you see the witches and the boy stares back out, we almost like there's some eyes wide shut kind of
thank you
moment.
for saying that. Yeah,
Even though that is not,
yet another
I don't mean
Kubrick film, by the way.
it's yeah, exactly. But like we've seen shots similar to that, but the framing of it even
Yes.
is similar in ways. But we also see some of that. We've seen some of that in the shot. I mean, I think that Kubrick is taking that. I think more likely though, Argento and Kubrick are coming from the same film school and what they've seen, which kind of goes back to my theory of, hey, if you really want to get into something, watch the movies that your heroes watched. Like, don't stop at the movies that your heroes make.
Yeah.
Watch the movies that, and if you can go back far enough, watch the movies that your heroes watched, because that will give you the palette to make something, because nothing's new. right?
Yeah.
Like we've been making films for a long time. We've been telling stories for a long time. We have, we
Yeah,
have the
no.
Epic of Gilgamesh, like is a thing that you can read that's very old. But like, from there, what were the things that influenced the things that you enjoy? And not to say that as an artist you have to go back that far, but holy moly, does it allow you to perhaps explore a freshness that may not be there if you only ingest what your heroes do,
Boy,
because they
I agree
they
with you
didn't
so much
springboard
about that.
from the forehead of Zeus, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yes, it's perfectly fine to watch The Shining over and over again, but it's probably wise also to figure out what was Kubrick watching and go and then branch off in another direction from the stuff that he was watching. You mentioned the she's sneaking around and she looks on and now, sort of the jig is up. She sees the witches all gathered together in some meeting room that they take a long time to discover. And the boy, the little Lord Fauntleroy boy, sees her and is staring at her, but he's in no hurry to and it has the composition of like an old painting. And it really gives me the impression of like something you might see in the Louvre. There'd be a bunch of characters like signing a document and one character is like turned towards the painter,
Hmm.
and so that we see that person sort of making eye contact with us. It
You,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
that's
sorry.
fascinating too. And what I think and I don't want to sound too much like an old fogey, even though I'm approaching that. My birthday is coming up. I have seen less commentary or perhaps talk of, and maybe this is just of our time. Maybe this time marches on. We have
Mm,
different influences, etc. Right? But I have seen less and less where you have a filmmaker and go, one day I saw this painting
mm,
or this piece of art that I had to take that composition. I'm not saying that never happens, but
mhm.
it comes up in media less and less, and it's more likely I saw this movie, and that's completely fine. But it just struck me as because of the march of time, because of how influences work, that you might have a filmmaker who didn't have Tubi, right?
Yeah,
An endless amount of media, YouTube. I mean, everything we have now. You
yeah.
don't have Vimeo, you name it, right? Instead, you might see a piece of art. You might go to a gallery. You might go to a gallery opening. Like you could go or a museum and go, wow, this is the painting that struck me as I want to compose a scene like this. I want to shoot a scene
I wonder,
and now, because I mean, it's the march of time, but I see less and less of that where you see a direct perhaps lift from
well, I mean,
perhaps a painting, and it still happens,
the danger is being
right?
accused of being called precious. Like, for instance, Argento
Sure.
could get away with recreating the Nighthawks in Profondo Rosso, and people just go, "Oh, how funny! There it is. That he just walked by the Nighthawks," right? But I think I don't. I think people are. If they do it, it's a deep, deep cut so that people they won't notice it. In other words, it's a joke with themselves. I mean, I would suggest that Scream includes sort of the longest sustained Edvard Munch joke ever put to film.
I mean, sure, but you know what I mean. I'm more talking about film composition and shot composition.
Yeah,
But we often hear from more directors and perhaps less cinematographers. So there might still be a bunch of cinematographers. I'm just not listening to their commentaries or whatever. So maybe I'm wrong in the fact that
no, you're probably. Well, I
but I
really
think,
have
and I
no.
think it's the march of time as well. Like you're less likely to go to a museum
Yeah,
and have that part of your brain kind of clicked. Or I mean, now also you could do a Google image search and get thousands upon thousands of
yeah,
pieces of art. That used to but because of that, often it's less precious,
yeah,
right? Because you can click and click and click and click. Then they register. Whereas I was struck by the size of this painting and its composition, and that caused me to shoot this scene this way.
yeah.
Is less likely to happen if you are given 1,000 images and you just scroll through them until you find kind of the one you like.
That's a really good point.
But I know we're far afield, but these are, I don't know.
No,
This
but
is kind of
it's
what
super
the discussion.
interesting. And by the way, I don't think we have to walk plot wise through the end because we already really talked about it. Other than I would say this: once Susie discovers, I get it. There's a conspiracy and there is a witch and she can be invisible. Once she actually attacks, the message of this film is that once you can identify the evil, that's the hard part. Getting rid of it is easier
It's
compared with identifying it.
I wish that there had been maybe another few minutes. Like I feel
Right,
like this heroine d- doesn't have much of a struggle. Like she
right,
sees the reanimated corpse of her dead friend, and that's disturbing. But then for whatever reason she can see the outline of the witch
right.
and she stabs her, I guess, with a hairpin is what it looks like, and or
That's
a
right.
It's
It's a
not.
sewing
hairpin.
needle.
Yeah, it's whatever
It's
was
a
in.
hairpin lifted from the
No, no,
peacock
it's
configuration.
literally the bird with the crystal plumage.
Yeah,
Oh
It's
shit,
literally,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
you're
literally
right.
like
right.
Huh.
it's an homage, and
Yeah,
it's a piece of that. Like I thought that
Wow, how interesting.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think
That's
about
what it
that.
like
said. Yeah, that's what they said that it was.
like
Okay.
it's his own, like, by the way, tying it back to some films.
Sure. Yeah, because it
But
was.
it
Yeah, that's what I
breaks.
was gonna say. It was a
Yeah,
sculpture that broke.
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
The
No.
the the the,
Okay.
the ease of which she dispatches of this witch is a little, I don't know. It is one of the things that makes me feel frustrated
Super
with
easy,
this
barely an
movie.
inconvenience to quote
Yeah,
Brian
Yes.
George.
exactly. It's a great example of that actually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um
Well, I mean, in modern Hollywood parlance, what they do, like everybody's well trained now, that your act three it will be broken up into 5 beats, where there's what you try to do, and then so you gather up your plan on what you're going to try to do. You try to do it. You have a surprise. You fall back, figure out a new plan. You execute that plan, and that's it. So it's a so that you break so that Act Three is really a miniature version of your entire story. We're used to that now, so it's super weird to see her go up, come up with a plan, execute the plan, the end. But that's what happens. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. No, it is. And then when she leaves, yeah, everything kind of blows up. But I mean, if you think about,
it
in the
does. It
house,
blows up, even
if you
including the
think
other
about
witches. Yeah,
everything blows up. Yeah, the other witch is which is weird because I'm like, they're not, it's not like they're dead, I don't think. They're not undead. So I don't understand why they all kind of just fell apart once the witch was killed. I
well,
don't know. It was kind of
it's
like,
like the House of Usher. Like once the evil
Yeah.
is destroyed, the place just basically starts falling apart.
so
Yeah.
then she leaves and you get nothing, like you're saying, Drew, you get nothing else for her to like kind of close her chapter, like some kind of nice postscript of where she goes from there. It's just she just kind of walks away and grins. And I'm like, well, is she going to be okay? I mean, is this thing going to follow her anyway? Still, like, what's going to happen? I kind of wanted a poltergeist style scene, where they have like they leave the house that explodes, and then they're in a hotel and they push the TV out the door.
sure.
See,
That was so funny.
it's weird because so much of this is not realistic in any way or lifelike. Like it just has that nightmarish quality. But I actually am okay with just life isn't tied in a pretty bow like that. And that enigmatic smile that she has is her kind of, yeah, F this like that brief moment of I have a window before everything else. It's like I always tell people, like, we see all these movies about how like Total Recall, like, have this vacation. To me, I want an extended period of that time between you when you wake up and then you realize all the crap that is going on in your life. Like there's a brief window sometimes if you haven't had a nightmare coming out of sleep before you go, oh damn it, it's Monday and I have to work and I have to get my car inspected and all that, right? And she has that window of time when the evil's behind her, who knows what the heck is moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's what we see. And then maybe it gets messier, maybe it doesn't. I mean, somehow she's got to explain how she was the last person walking away from a fire that killed everybody in the conservatory.
Yes.
But for this, I think the credits work for me personally.
I just felt like it was very sudden. I was agreeing with
But I mean, the
true about
crazy
that
thing is,
abrupt
film's
ending.
already nearly 100 minutes long, and I mean, so it's like it's. Uh, I can understand the different pressures pulling them in one direction and another. Do we tip it a little bit more towards even less plot, or a little bit more towards more plot? We should get our final thoughts, and I will kick it off by saying the funny thing is you do wind up with something that a lot of people consider one of their favorite movies. So the choices certainly could have gone a lot worse, but if let's go to our final thoughts, and also go ahead and mention anything that we failed to bring up, if you like, because I'm known to miss details that are worth spending some time on. So Drew, we started with you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think I had as much to say about this one as other ones, like, because I feel like my whole thesis is I understand why people like this movie. I don't hate it, like,
Right.
especially this last time, I enjoyed watching it. But it's not ever going to be like my be all end all go to
Sure.
rainy day comfort food movie. And like, I pointed out the stuff that I don't like about it, and that being said, I think it's a beautiful movie, and I totally understand why people love it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Julia, what about you?
Yeah, so thinking back through it, yeah, so there's a few little things that, I mentioned that bugged me about kind of disjointedness. Like you say, it's 100 minutes. It could be longer than 100. I mean, there's nothing, that had room to be longer. Or they could have cut a few things, like cut some of the extraneous parts that I don't know. I could have cut a few things, I guess. But for the most part, I think it holds together really well. I don't think it's lacks substance, but it's also not super deep. It's not like you have like these incredible, character arcs or anything like that. There is, you do care about what happens to some of these folks, and you are interested in and kind of what's going on. So yeah, I don't think it's perfect, but gosh, it sure is, like we said, stylistic and cool looking and cool sounding. I mean, and that to me is just worth so much because it's going to be memorable. I'm not going to, like I said, I don't remember if I've seen it before. I must have seen it many years ago. I feel like I would remember seeing it, but I guess I must have seen it. But anyway, it feels memorable. So if I did see it before and forgot, then I'm sorry. I apologize to the movie for that.
I mean, I know that I struggled with that myself. That was my point at the beginning, is that I feel like with Italian horror and Spanish horror, these Euro horrors of the mid-century, and this is 77, so it's the end of the mid-century, I suppose. But it feels more of a piece of that stuff. I kind of feel like you can see them a couple of times before your brain contextualizes what they are, and then suddenly it snaps into place. Go, oh yeah, I have watched, some Osorio movies and so forth. So yeah, I think it's easy to forget, and then you start seeing it all. Tony, what about you?
I mean, I really enjoy this movie as a piece of art, regardless of anything else. But also, I think we did gloss over the movie does follow a horror tradition of kind of going from kill to kill to kill. So we did gloss over, Daniel's unfortunate demise, the blind pianist Daniel,
Yeah,
who's witches do have outreach throughout the city, because when he is killed,
yeah,
his seeing eye dog is the culprit. Is
right.
horrible, horrific.
See, that's one of the times when I would cut some because that scene takes way too long. Like it's a
Mm.
cool looking scene, like that he's
Oh,
walking in the plaza,
yes.
but then they just stand there being creeped out for a long time, and it's like,
Right.
okay,
I
let's
got
move
you.
on.
The horror of when she finds her friend who's been turned from going into a room full of razor wire to definitely a sacrificial murder, to
Mhm.
then at the end becoming her vision of what's the most horrific thing, because she becomes out as undead.
Yes.
And all of that horror, we kind of glossed over that, but I think, I don't know, maybe I should have left that and let people discover it if you haven't.
No, but that's pretty
I guess
good.
we
I
don't
think that's
spoil
pretty.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's still a lot there, and be horrified by, to be surprised by. And yeah, I think visually this is the perfect storm. To me, it might be my favorite Argento for sure, because of all the elements, the color, especially now that you can see it on Blu-ray, especially like that rest. The Blu-ray I have, and I wish I had it, like I said, on UHD, is so amazing to look at. And the score is just so, like, it transfixes you. It's just such an original thing. For now we have, again, once if you watch it now, that's always the danger. And I think we talked about it with when you watch Godzilla 54 now, is it going to have the same impact? You've never seen it, but you've seen everything that's come out in 60 years.
Mhm.
Like you can't that can't help but change things, right? Like, oh, is this even compelling to me because I've got 60 plus years to do this? In this case, 40, I guess 50 now that it was 70. No, it was in between. I guess that's right, because it was 77. We've had time to kind of chew on both the film itself and the genre.
Yeah.
So is it going to be as effective when you've again got an endless stream of things you can watch? That's for other people to determine, but I personally really enjoy this because of just the context of when I saw it originally, and I can catch new things. We live in a world now where you can get various versions of it. You can listen to it in Italian, you can have it with commentary, you can see two different title sequences, you can see it cut, you can see it uncut, all of that. Wow, what a time to be alive, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really enjoy it, but I also get where Drew is coming. Like, I totally get where Drew's coming from. And this isn't even my favorite horror movie, but boy, if nothing else, if you watch it, it's gonna have bits that stick with you. Like, if you come away and go, I don't really remember much of it, I don't know what movie you watched. Whether it's the color or the sound, like, it, at the very least, I think it should have the effect of going and seeing something that you saw that really impressed you in a museum. But I think it's more than that myself.
I think I'm really impressed by how unique this film still looks. So that if you were to watch it today, I think you could
Agreed.
certainly watch it from a plot perspective and go confused here and there. I don't know if this is how you would do something today, whatever. But I think there's still not a lot of movies that look like Suspiria. I mean, it's just really really unusual, and the fact that it's unusual as it is, but it is not like a surrealist film, so it does have a plot. To me, it's sort of, it hits a sweet spot of both, because if I were really into art film, I would just spend my time watching just a bunch of art films, and um, so I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk about this. I know that I will wind up watching this movie more in the future because it's a powerful one to me. Although looking at my shelf, it's really weird. I am realizing that I don't have Suspiria anymore. I must have sold that copy or something. How strange. Or loaned it to
Oh,
somebody. God
it
only
is
knows.
available now on UHD. I know I don't mean to harp on that. People are like, can you shut up, Tony? But like, but seriously, that's like, and if you do get a copy of the Steelbook, it is a really beautiful package. It's
Mm.
with booklet. I mean, and the artwork is amazing. If you look at it online, it's
I think it would be cool to get a Blu-ray box of all three films together, because even if they don't stack up all that well, I would still love to watch all of them together. I think that would be great,
no, I
especially
think
since
that's
they
that's
cover
well
like
worth
30
it.
years of time. I mean, I think the last one came out in like 2007 or something. So yeah,
Yes.
so that would be really wild. Okay, let's get endorsements, whatever you've been. Boy, this is such an interesting topic. We've just shot through this, right? Just like bam. It's this has been a very invigorating conversation. So I would love to hear about what you've been talking about, listening to, or what have you. Drew, do you have anything for us this week?
I have become very, very into the comic book couples counseling podcast.
Huh.
It is exactly what it sounds like. Th- there is a couple, Brad and Lisa, who every episode is they pick a different comic book, couple or family or whatever, and they put them, through a form of couples counseling with, they find like a psychiatrist or psychotherapist or love expert whose work they base the episode on, and they've done Reed Richards and Sue Storm. They've done, Scott and Summers and Jean Grey. I just listened to an episode with Apollo and the Midnighter. And they actually did a quite extensive series on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as like family counseling. And it's fascinating, and I always come away from it thinking differently about the characters a little bit, but also it makes me strive to look at my own characters differently. So it's just a fascinating podcast by a charming couple.
That is very cool. Thank you very much, and that just reminded me that I need to check that out, because that's wonderful. All right, Julia, what about you?
I'm trying to think. I don't really have I don't think I have anything
We've
that we
been
haven't already
busy
talked
this
about.
week. I
Yeah,
mean,
we
we
talked
had
about. Well, see, I've been obsessed. Unfortunately, this is not my endorsement because I don't think you should be obsessed with this. But I've been obsessed with the Alex Murdaugh trial. So that's
this
been
is so funny.
my
The-
whole week just playing that. But anyway, no, we talked about Poker Face a little bit last week. I know Tony's a big fan. I'm loving Poker Face. I think it's just so interesting and fun. So I'm just gonna re-endorse that one.
That's wonderful. Tony, what do you have?
I've mostly been back in the studio and then just kind of catching stuff late at night, like little bits before I fall asleep. So I don't have a lot. Although I will recommend. This is the pain of like watching things at film festivals. So there was a Fantastic Fest movie that I saw that I think we talked about called Venus.
Uh-huh.
They came out in 2022. And I think, in my opinion, if you wanted to see like a companion piece to Suspiria, even though it's not supposed to, it's supposedly more influenced by perhaps Dreams of the Witch House by Lovecraft. But it's I think has some things in common with where I would see a more modern Suspiria happening. It's called Venus. I don't know if it has a distributor, unfortunately, so that's probably not helpful at all. But I hope it comes out. It's from Spain, and that is a movie. When it does come out, I would love for it to hit Shudder. That would be amazing. But
I am in complete support of promoting a film that isn't being distributed yet, because sometimes we run across them and we're like, I don't know how, but you got to see this movie. That's a great idea.
by the co-director of Rec, if you liked Rec and Rec 2.
Yeah, we even talked about Rec on the show. Yeah.
So, yeah. So if it comes out and you can see it and you like Suspiria and you want to kind of see where perhaps the future of a Suspiria is, I would recommend Venus. It was a surprise hit for me. Fantastic Fest. Other than that, I've just been playing, just kind of filling my time and then counting down to my half century birthday rock show here in Austin. I don't know if we have fans in Austin, but I'm hoping that, I don't know, maybe if you want to come out, that happens on the 23rd at Far Out Lounge. Other than that, just watching as much. Again, I'm still loving Poker Face, and we watched since we finished Kunk on Earth, we watched Kunk on Britain, and we're almost through with that. It's it's just
That one
funny.
that one I didn't love because it makes me really uncomfortable to
I
see
agree.
her mess with the poor academics like that. I'm just like,
Yes.
oh, this hurts.
I will say that we started watching Kunk on Britain on YouTube, and and there's one academic on there. I really just, his candor and the way he goes about it is really good. But yes, Rain
Like
and
the
I
Daily
both kind
Show
of feel
used to
that
do
way.
that.
Like
Yeah, the
we're
Daily Show used to do that. It drove
feel
me
bad.
nuts. I was like, oh no, not again.
No, I feel bad. I do feel bad. I will admit, like, I'm not just like, haha, because, there before the grace go I is one of those, like, I don't want somebody to do that to me. But yeah, that's mainly what we've been watching.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we've been super busy in the last week, and I've been trying to get a book done, at least the first draft of it. And I've been doing this method where you do an audio draft first, where I'll turn on, either Word and just dictate, or Otter into a transcription, and I just talk my way through the book, beginning to end. And so I've just got another like 9 chapters to go, and then I'll start all over retyping it. But as a way to get the whole story down. So first thing, my first endorsement is if you're interested in writing, you should check out. You should take a look at methods for drafting first in audio. There's a book called "How to Be a Dictator" by Kevin J. Anderson about this, but there are other people who do it, and I totally recommend that. If you want to know more about that, you can come to the Facebook page and ask about it because it has worked for me. I've written books this way before, and I love it. It doesn't get you a publishable draft, but it gets you your whole idea sort of down. It gets you a bad draft. Um, I mean super bad because of course your punctu it has almost no punctuation. It's true garbage that you then have to retype. The other thing is, Drew, you saw this. I was watching Old Fantasy Island because I've gotten really into the new Fantasy Island, the new show, which I think is great and tear jerky and very sentimental, just like the old one was at its best. So I went back to watch the 2 episodes of the old Fantasy Island show from the 70s and 80s, where Roddy McDowall played the devil. And it's so
There's
he's
a line
perfect.
in one of them where I forget her name, but the
Yeah,
actress
Julie, his
goes,
Rourke's
well, that's the
goddaughter. Yeah.
character's name, yeah. She goes, "Mr. Rourke, why did you let Satan come to the island?" Which I just I like recorded it on my phone because I want to make a GIF of it and just say that, like, just put that like every time like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert says something stupid. Why did you let Satan come to the island?
The devil has fantasies too. Okay,
Yes, it's so funny. Well, the second
they
time
involve fine Corinthian leather.
he's
There you go.
pretending that he's just on vacation. So he's like, "No, I'm just here on vacation." But no, he has yet another soul. And Rourke in these episodes, in the first time Roddy shows up, Rourke says, "It's not the first time that I've faced him." And in the second one, he actually says, he goes, "I have faced the devil many times."
Many times.
Many times. Rourke, a
But
man
always
who runs
prevailed, he
a
says.
weird resort, has faced the devil many times, and the devil calls him by his name, Rourke, as
Well,
though
it's
there is
like
no
it's
given name.
like Fonzie and Mork from Ork. It's like, what?
Yes,
What just happened?
right?
Well, I mean, he does. I mean, it does make a certain weird amount of sense considering that Rourke runs an island that can reproduce fantasies. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
even the non-supernatural parts are technically supernatural because you come to
Yeah, he
It's
this
seems
island
it's
and
like an
have things play
angel.
back out.
Rourke seems
Yeah.
like an angel.
there's some weird magic going on in Fantasy Island because there's one where he literally, he can play with time. Like he can send you back
Yeah.
to meet Jack the Ripper. You
So
know,
I don't want to get into this too far because I think we've already gone off too
Sure.
much on it. But I do want to say I think the original Fantasy Island, I think Rourke's an angel, but the new Fantasy Island, I think it's all AI. All what's it called, Jason? The Dark Mirror episode again?
that's Junipero, San
Junipero,
Junipero.
yeah. I think it's like Saint Junipero. I think it's all that people get on the plane, quote unquote, and then they get drugged or whatever, and then they're put under, and it's all like it's just all tapped into their brain. That's what I think about the new. That's my headcanon about the new Fantasy Island. But anyway, we should wrap up. So
Yeah.
Yes.
do you have anything
So
else?
that was super fun. No, I'm just so thankful that you guys are here, and I've really enjoyed spending time talking about this film and talking about Fantasy Island and talking about everything else. So
Have a great week, you guys.
have a wonderful,
Take care,
wonderful week.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.